Got a question for Dwayne related to the growth areas. I work for City of Casey. One of the key challenges we face is that there's no path at all, and the development always happens out of sequence. Major arterials left behind without paths at all. So we are sort of trying to get at least a path, no matter it's a shared path or a cycle path or anything like that. Is there any suggestions for us in the growth area how to sort of face those challenges?
Yeah, I mean, that sequencing of development and the whole development contributions world is really challenging for the growth areas councils. I understand that. I guess what we're talking about is what you should be aspiring to as the end result for that environment. How you get there through the interim period, I'm not really an expert on that, I suppose. But yeah, certainly we would, but what we would suggest to you, I think, is to go for the ultimate outcome rather than some intermediate thing like a shared path or a shared path, I suppose, when the likelihood is that that will become the long-term option. If you put something in initially, it'll probably end up being the end result.
I think, can I add to that, we've got to be careful that we're not designing people out of future. And I think what we try and say, for want of a better description, to think of terms in what we call the walking dependents. Many seniors, vision impaired, disabled, and children off leash, and where they don't mix. And if even if there's not a lot of seniors in areas of Casey's now, if we're stuck with it in Casey now, we're designing it out of it, designing them out of the future. So those who are really dependent on walking to get around for their exercise and that sort of thing.
Okay. Question?
Great presentation. Thank you very much. But one question is about hearing impaired, and that's really tricky with approaching bikes. You've only got one ear, or you've got reduced hearing. And is that coming up? Is that being identified as a problem?
It's been not so much with bikes, I don't know if you've got into one, but definitely with electric cars. And I'm on the board of the International Federation of Pedestrians. And internationally there's a lot of discussion about should electric cars have a noise-making machine even when they're stationary. Initially it was no, but I think it's really quite critical because one of the things for seniors is why there's so much risk on footpaths or whatever, because apart from hearing, sight, and their ability to recover is greatly reduced. If you do your hip when you're over 70, you've got a 40% chance of being dead in 6 months. But you can't get out of the way. So all those put together, but I would think that that's an issue. For bikes, I'm an everyday cyclist, have been since I moved to Melbourne in 1980 with my bike, and I've had a car about 6 years in that time. So I'm on the bike all the time, and I know that a lot of people say ringing bells and, is a problem. I think it's really critical, the culture of ringing bells, but we don't ring bells in the way they should be rung, have a loud enough bell and a far enough back distance. So hearing impaired, and people generally acknowledge a cyclist if they're really far enough behind.
Just a follow-up point.
Yeah.
That if you've got a hearing, I can only have one ear that works.
Yeah.
And I can't tell where sound comes from.
Yeah.
So an electric car or a bike making a noise is absolutely no use to me because I can't tell where it's coming from.
Yeah.
So I think the difference with that though is a cyclist coming up behind you is ringing a bell and you can hear a noise. You can't see them in front of you. You expect that they're coming from behind.
I don't know they're coming from behind. It's the whole point.
No, but if you can't see them in the front, you know that they're
They're
there.
coming from the side.
Yeah. If there's a path coming, you can zip up.
But I think it'd be just another reason that they don't mix for a lot of people.
Okay.
The way I see it is what you're describing with push bikes and everyone else is exactly the same thuggish behaviour that we have in Australia with motor cars versus everyone else. The way they drive and try to kill you. It seems to be the same people are getting onto their push bike and treating everyone else in their way exactly as if they're a motorist. I'm curious to see what you think.
Well, just in terms of the shared path context, I suppose, there's certainly an argument that there's a problem with a sort of a small number of users who are causing a problem. And that's probably true, but there's also an issue just of the inconsistency, I suppose, between putting walkers and cyclists together, in that most cyclists, the average cyclist, wants to travel faster than would really be the desirable speed.
I think we've got a really aggressive road culture.
Yeah, we do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, the duty of care that we had in, say, Netherlands or Sweden, where you hit a pedal cyclist, you have to prove that you were not at fault. It'd be great if we had that here. We'd probably unlikely, even though we advocate for it, we're probably unlikely to get it. We probably need to get to the point where drink driving, 30 years ago, it's like I slap on the wrist, oh yeah, no worries, I'll do it. But it's got to the point now where it's just about nearly universally totally unacceptable. So we've got to get to that. But I think one of the things where it does work really well is where we have proper European type shared spaces. Doesn't always work for particularly vision impaired, and I think audio impaired as well. But if we have a shared zone, and something like I was talking to someone earlier about, say, a German model of a pedestrian priority zone where vehicles have to travel at an absolute speed of 20k and have to give way to walkers, it changes the equation. If it's just bikes and cars, bikes come off second best. If it's just bikes and walkers, walkers come off second best. You put them all in together and a different scenario often happens.
Okay.
I'd just like to make a comment around that. From a local government point of view, we started putting in shared trails 15 years ago, and the volume was not where it was today. And so consequently, we've encouraged people to use them, both cyclists and both pedestrians. Now we have been so good at what we've done. We've got this volume, we've got this mix, we've got this conflict. And now we have to start looking at other ways to resolve these conflicts. And the segregated path is a great opportunity to do that, but then once again it comes down to space and retrofitting in areas and things like that. We've got to work through those issues. And there are minorities in both pedestrians, cyclists, dog walkers, anyone who are aggressive out there. But it's because we have now done our job, I believe, quite well, that we've got lots and lots of people using it. And the next step is that we have to widen, we have to have bigger shared spaces, we have to have segregated. There's got to be some options, a lot of options that we provide.
Yeah. You can certainly see it as a problem born of success.
Well, otherwise we're just, once again, we're just having a blame game on who's right and who's wrong and who shouldn't use it and what times you should use it. I mean, we're looking, people are saying, well, you should only allow cyclists to do it, cycle there on commuter times, and it should be open to, you're going...
Which is rubbish, because 25% of kids are now cared for by a grandparent. So 25% of Australian kids are cared for by a grandparent. And often we have these arguments, let them ride on the footpath, but just at commuter time to school. So I'm just saying, what, the grandparent can't walk a kid to school because you want to ride your bike. So yeah, we can't do it. One of the issues we're arguing in our paper too is state government, or ideally federal, but for God's sake, we've got no hope at the moment. But state need to step in to support local councils to actually do some of these infrastructure changes, because state particularly have also funded councils to do it, but the state needs to step in and start to resolve in these really high volume areas particularly.
Okay. Up the back, question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question on bollards, which are the bane of every cyclist in Australia, I think. And councils have great reluctance to remove them in certain circumstances until you point out to them that it would stop a mobility cart going through, it would stop a mum with a pram going through, and you don't even mention getting a bike through, and magically the bollards disappear. So I just wondered whether you, Walks Victoria, have a view on bollards.
I'll just say, bollards, I know out in the west there's a lot of bollards, and a lot of the bollards are put on the shared paths because bloody motorbikes. I think out in motorbikes getting on them, so they put there to stop them. It doesn't stop, I know, to go around, but that was the idea. But you might...
Yeah, all I would say is that there hasn't been a lot of research about what works as a speed control device for cyclists that isn't actually going to endanger the cyclists. So there's a lot more work to be done there, I think, in terms of infrastructure that manages speed on shared paths.
I think the bollards there to reduce speed or something. I thought they're almost always there to stop a car going through once every 2 years or something, and they inconvenience 40,000 cyclists in the meantime.
But, some people look at whether we need to put bollards on shared paths as a way of calming bike riders. We have to look at what we need to do to slow the speed on shared paths. So we have to look at design options. Now, it's an area we just have to look at. We're not saying you need to do this, this or this. Now, I know as a bike rider, you know, when you've got shared vegetation and stop, you can't see if there's someone coming, sort of thing. I used to think, you know, councils just, you know, clean it out so people can see. But now I sort of think, oh, actually, it's probably good because it slows bike riders down. So I've sort of changed my personal experience of it. Now, you have a question?
I was just say that the Australian standards are also cycling for transport, and they have taken that road mentality of you need to get the person from A to B in the fastest time possible, and therefore you make the path straight, direct, and that actually increases speed. And the biggest conflict, as we've been discussing, is speed. Whereas the whole concept of the recreational shared pathways was about slowing people down and connecting them to nature. So whether that's on a bike, to actually slow down and actually smell the roses as you're going past in the parkland. And that seems to have been lost once the transport engineers got attached to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll just touch on, then there was the article about Strava, the bike app that came out in the Age about 3 months ago, that they were using shared paths, some of the cyclists, for time trials, where they were getting up to speeds of 70k on some of Melbourne's shared paths. So it was like, as a trophy, I went down this hill and they're going, okay, I can beat that. So it was actually using shared paths for time trials.
Okay, I think we'll probably have to wrap it up there. We've gone over time and it sounds like Ben's got to get away. Dwayne will be around for a couple of minutes. So Dwayne will be here, and I'm sure Dwayne can cover all the lot of issues on that. And then after that, we're going over to the Red Spice Road for a dinner, and I hope you can join us there and we can continue the conversation. I'm not sure who else is coming, but are you coming? No. Okay. Thank you, Ben and Dwayne, for your participation and presence and responses to questions. It's been a good event. That's right. Thank you. I'd like to thank RMIT for providing the venue. Thank you, audience, for your participation.